Hi, I am Shannon Turner, and I am covering addiction, overdose, and homelessness. The reason I chose this is because all of these things have affected my life greatly. I am an addict. I have been sober for almost 17 months, but it's been a very long battle. It's been off and on for 30 years. And it is something I'm very passionate about, and the reason I am going to Beale University is to become an addiction counselor so I can help people. Addiction, overdose, and homelessness. We're going to talk about effects of addiction, statistics of overdose, statistics of homelessness, and how addiction and homelessness affected my life. In the most recent survey, 11.15% of Maine residents reported using illicit drugs in the past month. The national average was 8.35%. Additionally, 3.41% of Maine residents reported using an illicit drug other than marijuana in the past month. The national average was 3.53%. NationalArchives.gov, 2023. Drug abuse is a national epidemic, and the numbers are continuing to rise. Heroin is becoming a cheaper replacement for opiates as states continue to crack down on the pill mills, making the cost of opiates too expensive. Prescription drugs, according to the treatment episode data set TEDS in 2009, people admitted to drug rehab for substance abuse for opiates, not including heroin, was 4,334. Of this number, 52.1% were male and 47.9% were female. Heroin, the amount of individuals who entered treatment for the use of heroin in 2009 was 1,362. 58.2% were male, 41.8% were female. 95.2% of this population were white. Recovery Connection, 2023. Now, this is a chart of comprehensive tools for fatal and non-fatal overdoses in 2023 in Maine. It shows a small percentage of fatal overdoses and ones that law enforcement responded to. The dark blue, which is 40.8%, was sent to the emergency department. The light blue is 25.8% of sent that was responded by EMS but not transported, and 23.8% were helped by people in the community. The number of total overdoses in Maine exceeded 9,500 last year. A record high of 627 Mainers died from drug overdoses in 2021. And the data from the first part of this year shows a 9% increase over the comparable period last year. Fentanyl was involved in 77% of fatal deadly overdoses in Maine. Senator Collins, 2022. Now, these charts show comprehensive totals for fatal and non-fatal overdoses in February of 2023. The top chart is a percentage. Again, it shows a small percentage that were fatal and law enforcement responded to. The dark blue is the 43.8%, which was sent to the emergency department. 23.5% was EMS responded, but they did not transport, and 24.2% was helped by the community. Now, the bottom graph is a number of suspected and confirmed fatal overdoses. The medium blue is confirmed fatal overdoses, and you can see the fluctuation from January of 2022 to January of 2023. Now, on the very end in January of 2003, it shows a little bit of both of confirmed fatal overdoses and suspected. But again, you can see the fluctuation throughout the year. Drug deaths totaled 504 in 2020, a 33% increase over 380 in 2019. Of those 504, 83% were caused by opioids, nearly always in combination with other substances like methamphetamines and fentanyl. There were 4,411 people experiencing homelessness in Maine on January 2025, a significant spike compared to previous years. That was the Maine Drug Data Hub in 2023. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how addiction and homelessness and overdose affected my life. My first overdose was April 8th, 2018. There was an article in the paper of the Bangor Daily News. It states that state police and Maine Drug Enforcement Agency say 3 people had been arrested in connection with 3 heroin overdoses in a span of 30 minutes in Washington County. Around 4 p.m. Friday, state police troopers and officers from the Major Crime Unit responded to 2 overdoses in Machias Port and a third in East Machias. The victims were 2 men and a woman. I was that woman. One of those men was my boyfriend at the time. All of the victims were revived with Narcan. It took 9 shots of Narcan to revive me and 45 minutes of CPR. There have been no reported fatalities that day. That was Bangor Daily News, April 8th, 2018. Now the pictures are from left to right. The far left is me just a few hours before I overdosed that day. It was on carfentanil. I remember bits and pieces. I remember doing the drug in my car. I had 3 other people with me. One of them is one of the ones that did the CPR, and then I remember waking up in a snowbank with paramedics and cops all around me. And the first paramedic I saw was someone actually I had grown up with, and he's the one that talked me into going to the hospital. I tried to convince him that I was fine, that I wanted to just leave. I didn't need help. I wanted to go home. And even though I didn't have a home, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to get out of there. I thought I was going to be in trouble. I thought I was going to go to jail. I was like, my ex finds out, I'll never see my kids again. I was already struggling to see them as it was. I have 4 children total right now, and I have not been the mom that I have always wanted to be to them. My oldest daughter now, Rebecca, lives with me, and we have a great relationship now. She just moved back in January, but there was years she wouldn't even speak to me. I have a son that will not speak to me now. He is very, very angry with me. He has every right to be. I see my 11-year-old on the weekends, finally. It took a lot of convincing to my ex-husband to get him to let me have my son again, and I understand. I mean, I didn't have a place to live. I was using all the time. The middle picture is me at a supervised visit of she's now 2.5, and we have custody back as of January of this year. But that was her first birthday party. It was at a supervised visit at the DHS office. As you can see, I'm barely 100 pounds. I was even late to see her because I had to stop and get drugs to be able to even function. I was sick, and I knew I couldn't even go see her without having to use first. And the picture on the right is a memorial of the person that I was with for almost 4 years. He overdosed in a tent where he lived in I-95 in Bangor on May 13th, 2020. Now, these are a couple pictures of where I was living up behind the homeless shelter called the Hope House in Bangor. There's a barricade that I spray painted, "Welcome to Tent City. We aren't bad people, we're just misunderstood." And I strongly believe that. Addicts are judged greatly. There's a very big stigma on addiction. People think that addicts choose that life, that we choose to live in tents in the middle of winter, that we choose to destroy our lives and destroy our relationships and to abandon our children. And we don't. It's a disease. To me, addiction is like cancer. Active addiction is when you're battling the cancer, going through chemo, radiation, whatever. Recovery, I feel, is like when you're in remission. And if you relapse, it's just like getting the cancer back. Some people survive, some people don't. These tents on the bottom right are where I lived with my fiance. I met him shortly after my past boyfriend had passed. I met him that day. I was actually cleaning out the tent of all of his stuff after he had died. And he became a really good friend. He helped me through everything. I was in a very bad place. I was pregnant. I had relapsed because 3 weeks prior to Stephen, which is the one that died, 3 weeks prior to him passing, my mom had passed. And granted, my mother and I had had a strained relationship off and on my whole life. She was an alcoholic. She had mental illnesses. She was abusive mentally and physically. And I had just regained or reconnected with her just a couple months prior to her dying, which was very, very sudden. I had plans to go see her, and then I got a call one morning saying that she was dead. She had died in her sleep. I was blind to what my addiction was doing for a very long time. I was living out of my car in a tent for a big part of my life. I would see multiple overdoses daily. I was no longer shocked to see anymore. We would Narcan whoever it was overdosing, and then we would use right after. I saw police pull bodies out of our encampment and not even wonder why. I already knew the reason. It's sad to see. Now, the tents on the bottom right are where I was living and where we had given someone, an older lady that had come up there and just been dropped off. She had no tent, no nothing, no shelter, so we gave her our old tent and we went and got another one. It's hard to see that kind of thing. There's people of all ages. There's kids there. There's people my age. There's people in their 20s. There's people in their 60s. You know, there's not enough places for people in addiction and that are homeless, and there's not enough help. There's not enough resources. There's so much judgment that people don't even want to ask for help. I finally went to rehab in December 1st of 2021. The top left picture is the day I graduated, 6 months of inpatient rehab. The top right corner picture is me getting my 30-day tag from NA. The bottom left is me and my fiance and our daughter over the summer. And then the bottom right is my fiance with our daughter at a birthday party. I was numb to all of it at this point. Before I went into rehab, I didn't know statistics of how many people were living the way I was. I didn't want to know. It was all around me, so I already knew. I didn't need statistics. I could see it with my own eyes. I was living it. Too many people that need help, there's not enough resources to help them. People are dying every day, and immediately knowing why, but being so numb to it all that a lot of people look the other way. I was one of the lucky ones. I got out. I went to rehab. I found a place to live. I got custody back of my daughter. I'm rebuilding broken relationships. With my dad, I got to see him after over a year. I never thought I'd see him again. The last time I spoke to him was the day before I went to rehab, and he told me he didn't care what happened to me. And that killed me. I'm in college at Beale now to become an addiction counselor because I want so badly to be able to help the people that have not been as lucky as I am, that are still out there struggling. I have so many friends that are still there. There's people that I haven't even met. I know they're suffering. I see it every day. Every day I take my daughter to daycare, I have to drive by where I used to live, and there's campers and RVs and tents all over the place. It's all over Bangor. You can't go anywhere without seeing somebody having to live in a tent somewhere, or somebody walking down the street that's high, or seeing paraphernalia all over the ground. It's sad. Addiction, overdose, and homelessness it's an epidemic. As of January 2020, Maine had an estimated 2,097 experiencing homelessness on any given day, as reported by Continuums of Care to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD USICH.gov 2020. There were 4,411 people experiencing homelessness just in Maine on January 25th of 2023, which is a significant spike compared to the previous year, or GISCO 2022. Now, there's a quote that I had here. It says, "Stop demonizing addicts. No one chose to be a drug addict. No one chooses to ruin their lives. No one chose to restrain their relationships. No one chose to be homeless. Addiction is a mental illness. Over 50% of addicts have some other mental disorder. They need help, not punishment." Now, it's hard living on the streets. It's hard suffering from addiction. Again, I am doing this, I am getting my degree because I want to help people. My counselor actually pointed me in the direction to become an addiction counselor the first time I got sober. I was sober for 6 years. I was in an abusive relationship. I had lost 3 babies back to back the last 3 years of it. And when I moved out and got a divorce, I wasn't allowed to see my kids. He kept them from me, so I relapsed. I didn't think I had any reason not to use. I had bottled up so much pain over the 6 years that that's what happens with addicts. Unfortunately, sometimes it comes out in a relapse. Some people slip, some people relapse. It's any given day, there's so many people that are suffering. Just there needs to be more education about addiction and homelessness, and I've heard people say that we shouldn't waste the taxpayers' dollars on Narcan because addicts are just going to do it again. They don't care. It's just a waste of money, and that's not true. We are addicts. We are not bad people. We've made mistakes. We're human. And unfortunately, some people don't see it that way. Thank you.